So I'm going to move now to the negotiation marathon that happened over the last years. So since the dam started the construction in April 2011, after that, in May 2013, there was an IPOE, the International Panel of Experts, that recommended the 3 countries to do extra studies in order to study the impact of the dam, safety, etc. And then in March 2014, there was a TNC, the technical committee from the 3 countries, trying to work more and understand more about these studies and the collaboration in filling and operation. In March 2015, Egypt showed the intention, the good intention for collaboration by signing the DOP, the Declaration of Principles, and the Declaration of Principles indicated studies to be completed within 5 to 12 months. So this was signed in 2015. September 2016 agreed and signed with 2 consultancies to do the studies, and in November 2017, Egypt accepted the inception report that was produced by the consultant. Ethiopia rejected the report. December 2017, Egypt proposed that the World Bank play a mediation and an independent body in this negotiation. In May 2018, the 9 parties of the 3 countries decided national independent scientific research group from each country, 5 members, to collaborate together. In July 2015, this National Independent Research Group had a very good achievement, at least from my opinion, and I'm gonna give you a very simple overview about this achievement that we thought it was an achievement at that time. July 2019, Egypt handed a proposal based on what the scientific group had achieved, and then suddenly we realized that the proposal was rejected, and even the agreed principles was, let me say, Ethiopian colleagues and brothers, they said they were not agreed, and they changed their opinion again regarding these agreed principles. In October 2019, Egypt also requested the mediation and involving a new partner to be neutral in the discussion, to follow up, because we agree on something and then we go back again, and we agree on something and we go back again. So somebody has to be attending these to be fair and to document what's happening in such discussions. So the mandate of this National Independent Scientific Group was developing various scenarios related to the filling and operation. So we are not talking only about the filling, we are talking about the filling and the long-term operation after filling. So the 4 principles that we thought they were agreed already and documented in our outcomes is, number 1 is we 3 countries in the Eastern Nile, Blue Nile, the Eastern Nile Basin, they should follow adaptive and cooperative approach. So we have to collaborate, we have to coordinate together to have a multi-reservoir operation system. As any engineer, he knows what is a multi-reservoir operation system. Number 2 is to apply guaranteed minimum release, which means that the GERD should guarantee a minimum release based on the historical hydrological data. The 3rd point is identifying critical levels at all dams. So there is a critical level that we have to collaborate to avoid reaching this critical level in the upstream of HAD, the upstream of GERD as well. So we're trying to treat the dams in an equal and fair way. So keep a critical level in every dam that we collaborate together, not to go below these critical levels, and also avoid shutdown levels. So number 4 is the last one, joint cooperation mechanism. I think we heard the 2 speakers before, the first 2 speakers discussing how people collaborate, how people join forces and share data, because also was mentioned sharing data is very important. Having a cooperation mechanism is also a very important issue. And I think the best one to speak to us about the Egyptian proposal, and maybe also the Ethiopian proposal, will be Professor Hesham Bekhit. Professor Hesham Bekhit, as I mentioned, he's Professor of Water Resources at Cairo University. He has more than 20 years of experience in research and consultancy experience in water and environmental projects. Dr. Hesham has PhD in 2004 from the University of Nevada in the United States. He published many papers in international journals with high impact factor in groundwater and hydrogeology, involved in several national committees dealing with the Nile Basin countries, developed and coordinate the water engineering program, the undergraduate program, and shared also the coordination and management of the water resources diploma at Cairo University, which involves also many students from the Nile Basin country. He managed many projects funded by the USAID, STDF, GIZ, NPI, and other national and international organizations. So Professor Hesham Bekhit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Hani, for this introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So I have the honor today just to give you a brief about critical review on both the Egyptian and the Ethiopian proposal. I think I'm lucky I have talking after those very distinguished speakers. They paved already the roads and already introduced different aspects. So I will just build on what already have been discussed. So just getting into the topic directly, I will start with first. It's okay. Sorry for this technical impasse, just similar to the impasse that we are facing in the GERD. So just similarly. So it is a challenging. So even in this technical things. So going back to my presentation, I'll just go directly to from engineering perspective. If we look to how we will deal with what's the technical proposal for filling and operation. So we have to understand first what's the boundary condition. So we have boundary condition upstream and we have boundary condition downstream. If we look to the upstream boundary condition, we all know that the Ethiopian needs for hydroelectricity, and there is a big demand for that. So to do this, unfortunately, instead of going with what we heard in the first presentation of working with regional planning, we faced with a unilateral decision in 2011 with a decision of building GERD, which is resulted in an inefficient and oversized dam that is already have been criticized in many international papers, because you can build a smaller dam with a smaller impact with the same electricity. However, it was gone 2011, so we forced it to accommodate, and we try to accommodate a very large dam, which is the largest in Africa, that's controlled 150% of the annual flow. That's stored 150% of the annual flow. So this is the boundary condition on this case, and with the sole purpose of this dam is for the hydropower, is capacity 6,450 megawatt. So this is from the upstream boundary condition. Looking to the downstream boundary condition, We heard a lot about the water condition in Egypt. Egypt is the driest country in the world. This is according to the FAO Aquastat. If you look to the map here on Egypt on your right-hand side, it's permanently all of it are desert. Its dependence completely on the Nile River with more than 97%. As you can see, the only green part where the people are live in just around the Nile. And without GERD, currently we have facing annual water shortages 21 BCM. This is the difference between our demand and our resources. And we are trying to gap this shortages by the reuse. We are using the water for more than 3 or 4 times. And we only have 3.5% from the total land cultivated. This gives the per capita share for agriculture is less than 0.035 hectare per capita. Very small amount of land, agricultural land, which has resulted in a very big food gap. Compared in 2015, it was measured as $8 billion every year food gap without taking into account the inflation of the Egyptian currency. And we have importing more than about 60% of our food. So have already facing a food security. This means we have little bit resilience to cope with any water shortages. So having these 2 conditions, upstream and downstream, we need to get a balanced, reasonable formula that account for both demands, that account for the hydropower and they account for the water security. So how to get this? Unfortunately, the path of the studies didn't continue in order to generate the studies and to generate this. So we started as a national scientific research group to look at these different formulas that can generate filling and operation of the GERD. And I would refer to my colleague, Professor Dr. Hani, when he said the NISRG, which is the National Scientific Research Group from the 3 countries, have agreed on July 2018 on 4 principles. We thought that these principles we agreed together and we just need to convert these principles to rules. These principles, as listed above, adaptive and cooperative. Adaptive mean to be adaptive to the hydrological condition. You can accelerate or decelerate the filling based on the flow regime, if it is wet or dry. Cooperative, you have to look carefully in the system and to cooperate together. And to maintain to minimum annual guarantee flow, a threshold you have to guarantee every year. You can take the water above, but you have to fill also the water below, to respect the critical levels and strategic reserve storage in each dam, and to join coordination mechanism. So based on these 4 principles, we developed the Egyptian proposal and we presented to our brothers in Sudan and in Ethiopia. That proposal is developed based on the tools that already we have it from Deltares and from other resources. So we try different scenarios and alternatives to reach to this kind of formula that we are looking for. So we presented a proposal that is a comprehensive, equitable, reasonable, and follow adaptive and cooperative approach. Why it is comprehensive, I'll talk in detail in every one items, explain why, but comprehensive, it covers the different aspects of the whole process. So it covers filling, it covers long-term operation, it covers the cases of drought and prolonged drought, and put the measure to cooperate together during these periods. It covers the period of how to refilling, it covers data exchange, it covers how the mechanism of transferring these data. So all this, like why it is comprehensive. It's equitable, it treats the 2 dams in equal manner, it has equal strategic storage in each dam, and it treats the 2 dams with equal manner. So I will explain more on this, and it is reasonable. It allows the 2 dams to be operated and full function with the main purpose of each dam, the hydropower generation and multi-purpose for High Aswan Dam, and it provides a formula that's adaptive and cooperative. Unfortunately, in last September, 30 September 2019, we have received a proposal from Ethiopia that's in the opposite completely. It is incomprehensive, unreasonable, and inequitable. So why I'm saying this? Let's dig into in details to compare between the three and critically review them. So let's start from the comprehensive perspective. Let's look to the contents of the two proposals. So you will find the Egyptian proposal, as I said, covering every single part of the options or the things that we will face during filling and operation, starting from the filling, operation during drought, refilling, preservation of environmental ecosystem, exchange of data, and permanent coordination mechanism. This is what we proposed. And from the other side, what we received is two things: filling rules without even no measures or appropriate deal with the hydrological condition, especially in the drought, and what it's called operation framework, not operation rules. More details are coming. So look into the context instead of the content. Let's go in the details. So if we start with the filling, what we propose, we propose rules to fill the dam in stages. And this is one thing that I need to very clarify. We agreed to have the dam in stages, not in years, not in a single meeting. Neither Egyptian or the Ethiopians talk about years. We are talking about stages. And each stage is according to the hydrological years. So filling in stages, according to the adaptive and cooperative rules, fill GERD to reach its full turbine level, which is 595, reported in my Professor Elko, to allow all the turbines to be operated as early as possible. So we propose 2 years. And in case of very exceptional severe drought, we have to take some measure to extend the filling, and we apply minimum guarantee flow. We propose 40, I will explain why, and maintaining a critical level at head, as well as in the operation will maintain critical level for GERD. So this is kind of what the elements of the rules in the filling. On the other side, our colleague in Ethiopia proposed filling GERD up to 595 to be attained as early as possible, unconditional, and also release a minimum of 31 BCM annually, or the natural flow. So 31 or less. So these are kind of the rules there. What does this rule means? So let's start with the exceptional case, if unconditional or conditional. The first 2 years, if said in the Ethiopian proposal says unconditional, we say if there is extreme condition, we need to extend. What will happen? So if we are facing a special exceptional drought and we need to fill the dam, and the filling coincide with this extreme drought, what is the norm in hydrology in general, in the worldwide, if extreme drought happen and a new dam need to build? So typically, the decision was to suspend the filling until the drought, extreme drought, pass away. But we are still saying that, no, we can cooperate together, working the word cooperative, and use the existing facility to start even filling in drought, but without undermine what's going on in the downstream. So to explain in detail about this, I'm quoting from the Ethiopian proposal. When they said the minimum flow is 31, they said, given that we have 2 years in the Blue Nile, we have flow was 21 at year 1913 and 29 at year 1984. So my question is, if in the second year need to subtract 13.5, that will raise the flow from 565 to 595, what will be the flow downstream? So simple calculation, if you subtract these two numbers, 21 minus 13.5, this means that the flow going to Sudan and Egypt is just 7.5 BCM or 15.5 compared with 49. So this is actually not acceptable and not reasonable. So the decision is to extend the filling is the reasonable things. And that's why we said we need something just from scientific outsider to see, is that reasonable or not reasonable? So having something like this, you have to put a condition even if it has a small probability, but the consequences is very high. As you know, the impact is the multiplication of the probability and the impacts that will occur. So although it has a small probability, but the impact is huge. So you have to consider this concept. What about the Egyptian proposal in this regard is saying? So simply the Egyptian proposal is saying the following. Look at this. So we have in the upstream GERD that's empty. This is before the filling. And on the downstream, we have High Aswan Dam that's contain several level of reservoir storage. So we have the first part, which is the red part, which is the level, the storage below the shutdown level. We use this storage to manage, offset the drought and the prolonged drought. And then the word critical level and strategic reserve is coming. So we agreed together to have a critical level. That's the storage between the critical level and shutdown level. We can name it the strategic storage. We agreed to have this. So this strategic storage is kind of alarming zone. So when you start reaching your alarm level, you have to take some measures. So this is the critical level. And then the prosperous level, which is above the critical level. So as long as we are in the prosperous levels, if the filling coincide with average wet years or something, so we can fill, and the High Aswan Dam will be decreasing from the prosperous zone without major impacts. But what happens if a drought occurs? And I would here refer to the flow of the Nile. If you see the flow of the Nile, there is a phenomena called Hearst phenomena, or the long-term memory. Long-term memory means when the flow coming in the Nile, if it is a drought, so the consequent years after that it will be a little bit of drought, so the drought will extend it. And if it is wet, also it is the same. So if you look to the graph, here this period in the dashed red board, if a drought to occur, more likely it will have several years of drought. This is Hearst phenomena that's well known in the Nile. So going back, if we faced with such condition, what we are proposing is to start filling. So you see the green part is going down and the blue part in the GERD will go up and start power generation. And we can continue filling as long as we still have this prosperous zone. When we start reaching the critical level, then we have to relax decelerate the filling because we are going in a very drought condition. So what's happening if we continue in a drought? So we propose that the Ethiopian dams will be fluctuating, generating electricity, but we are facing drought as well. So all alarming zone will be disappear. Shutdown will happen in High Aswan Dam, and even if the drought continue, this may cause to water shortages. So we have to cooperate in this situation. This situation is not a joke, and it is very serious, and we have to take it seriously. So going back, this is what we propose for the filling. Going to the second part, I know this is maybe too much technical, I'll just go through it. The minimum guarantee flow, although we agreed together to have a minimum guarantee flow, but suddenly in last September, our Ethiopian brother dropped the word guarantee and used the expression, the minimum flow, which is the minimum of, as per this definition, 31, or the inflow. If you look to the probability density of the inflow of the Blue Nile at GERD, you will find this is the maximum, like 70, and this is the minimum, which is 19 or 20 BCM. Below the average, this is the average. There is a mild drought condition, moderate, severe, extreme, and exceptional. What proposed from Ethiopia is 31, which is in the exceptional drought condition. So the minimum flow proposed in this proposal is like you putting Egypt in exceptional artificial drought. That's why we are saying this is not a reasonable proposal and it is not equitable proposal. Going back in more detail to this 31, this is the actual records of the GERD at GERD site of the Blue Nile. If you count, 31 happens twice a year. twice in the 115 years. In the last 115 years, just twice. So, or maybe barely 30 times, which is the third one, this one. So this is to set the limit below this is not reasonable and not acceptable for us. For Egypt, we propose the number 40 as a minimum guarantee, and this number 40 is not coming out of the blue. We are not in auction, they say 31 and we said 40. We based our calculation based on the average of the sphere's drought period, the 80s. If you calculate it, it's 39.7 something. So we said 40 or 39, something like this. This is the average period of worst condition. So doing this is like we are putting the system during filling in a severe drought condition. It is not reasonable to go below this. So by definition, we have a defined value to this, and this calculated based on that. And if you look to this 40, you see this is the moving average of the Blue Nile, and this is the average with the orange color, and this is the 40. And the 40 is just once, which is the case of 80s. And this is also the probability of that. After this, we talk about maintaining critical level. As Dr. Hani said, we agreed together to have a critical level and maintain this critical level in HAD and GERD as well. In the Ethiopian proposal that we received, they dropped completely the concept of critical level. They just ignore it totally. And we proposing the critical level 165, we believe this is very critical. At level 165, the total storage above the daily storage is just 46.3, which is less than 83% from the annual water demand in Egypt. So it is not reasonable to take all the storage. We have to have a buffer to mitigate the droughts. So that's why we say it is very important to have the concept of maintaining critical level. And if we not maintain the critical level, this kind of schematic, how the GERD will be filled and we have reached the daily storage and start facing the shortages. And going back to the tools that already provided by Lurtaris, we simulated this based on actual data and what proposed from Ethiopia. Just we use the tool and apply the inputs. So this is how GERD, the orange color, will go up, and this is how High Aswan will be dried completely if a period like the 80s occurred. So this is, if you didn't maintain a critical level, this is a very critical. So just to conclude the filling part, generally, even if the Egyptian proposal is applied, Egypt will suffer harm from the resulting filling of the GERD. So we are talking about, we have to take these measures, otherwise significant harm will occur, which is not accepted for us. So applying rules that does not implement adaptive, cooperative approach and does not take into consideration the hydrological condition of the river definitely will cause catastrophic and significant effect on Egypt. Let's move to the operation. What we have in the operation from Ethiopian proposal and from the Egyptian proposal. I'm quoting here exactly what is there in what is called operation framework, not the rules. Just please look at the word. So it says, if prolonged drought occur, GERD will release the incoming flow. This sound good, but how this will be implemented? Read. It says the drought, they define the drought to be if the flow in the river less than Q95. You know Q95 is the probability that's 95% of the flow greater than certain threshold. So the drought, they define it if the Q is less than Q95, and the prolonged drought, which is the only case that Ethiopian wants to cooperate, when the prolonged drought occur, means to have 4 consecutive years with the flow less than Q95. Let's look to the numbers and see how this condition will be applied. So this is going back again to the classification of drought period. And this is, by the way, according to the USGS classification. It is not my classification as well. So Q95 is here in the range of extreme drought, which is actually at the end of the range. So, and this value is equivalent to 35 billion cubic meter. So the definition of drought is unreasonable because it defined the drought at the extreme drought, not a drought. This is first. Second, going back to the definition of the prolonged drought, you need to have 4 years consecutive with less than these numbers. How many times it happens in the last 115 years to have 4 values less than 35? The answer is 0. This is the 115 records, and this is the 35, which is the definition of drought. And these are only 4 records, less than 35. And as you can see, there is no 4 consecutive years with this less than 35. So the only case that will have a cooperation has a probability of 0, which is mean no cooperation. Going back, more or less, remember the minimum flow suggested was 31, which is already less than the drought definition from Ethiopia, even. Going again to the remaining part of the operation framework, it says nothing. This is the second part. It says once filling of GERD is completed, the 3 countries will agree on guidelines and rules for annual operation of reservoir in the system at the end of rainy season each year. Can you imagine? A dam like a GERD, every year we need to go and sit and discuss operation rules. This is, I didn't hear it in any way. I think so. In any way, in anywhere, in any place in the world. So this is totally not acceptable. And then the second part, all reservoirs operators are responsible for adjusting their respective operation rules. No cooperation at all. Okay, let's compare what we propose. We propose, as I said, we propose 3 zones. And at each zone, we have some rules. So as I explained before, we have the zones of prosperous zones, which is above the critical level, and alarming zones between the critical level and shutdown level, and finally, the zones below the shutdown levels. So we have rules in every sections. In the normal operation, which is above average, above the critical levels, normal operation, the rivers are wet and there is above average. We are saying for that every year the flow should not drop below the minimum guarantee flow, and we should receive the average natural flow every 3 years to allow for flexibility for generating hydropower and to look at the downstream as well for the water resources. So we put rules for operation, and we identify the critical levels, and we place both dams on equal footing. And while the 2 dams above the critical levels, normal operations, which is to release the averages there, and the 2 dams cooperate to maintain their critical level. But if droughts to occur, the 2 critical level will not be able to be maintained. Then we have to put measures for the drought. How if the 2 dams reach to the critical levels? So first we are saying the 2 dams will support each other to maintain the levels above the critical levels if possible. If not possible due to drought, then we will start to use the strategic storage, which is equal in the 2 dams, 20 BCM, simultaneously and equal amount. So the 2 dams will be dropping together from the strategic storage, and if water is going up, it will be filled also in the same amount, simultaneously and in equal amount. That is to maintain both concepts of generating hydropower and preserving the water resources and hydropower in High Aswan Dam as well. And if you look at it from an international perspective, it is biased for Ethiopia because High Aswan Dam is multi-purpose dam, and GERD is just for hydropower, and the risk associated with the water shortages for the multi-purpose is higher than the risk associated with the hydropower. However, we continue if the prolonged drought to occur, so we need to go below the shutdown levels, and we will use the water below the shutdown levels in order to offset the shortage. And also, we will activate the drought management options in Egypt and Sudan. And then we presented the formula for refilling after these critical conditions. just to compare what is in the Ethiopian proposal regarding the, these abnormal conditions, which is drought and prolonged drought, it says when an unforeseen or urgent circumstances like drought or prolonged drought, the Water Affairs Institution for the three countries will develop mitigation strategy. So after the crisis to occur, so we'll set and will develop a strategy, which is not appropriate. And for the refilling, we present also comprehensive regime to allow the two non-seasonal reservoirs for the, after the end of the prolonged drought to go up together in equal amount using the surplus above the average. And this is the end of part of the Ethiopian proposal. We still have two parts for preservation of environmental and riparian ecosystem. I'm not talking about it because there is nothing in there to compare. And exchange of data, I need to recall the presentation of morning of Dr. Eric when he said, you cannot manage without sharing information. So we believe that sharing information is very important. And when we are saying sharing information, we are not putting the sharing information on GERD side only. We are saying we have to share information from High Aswan Dam, the level and releases, from Sudan level and releases, from GERD level and releases. Because you cannot manage without a transparent and clear information. This is what we are saying. And on the other side, unfortunately, this is also not accepted. And for the permanent coordination mechanism that will handle this exchange of data, it's not just to handle the exchange of data, also to have a monitoring and forecasting system to better manage. This is what we propose. And we propose like experts from the three countries to be allocated in the three countries. And unfortunately, we receive a flat no, as this is controversial with the sovereignty of Ethiopia. I don't know how exchange of the data and all this technical is kind of sovereignty. This is, I don't know how. So just the last thing that I need to share with you, if we applied the impact, the Ethiopian proposal, the total work and the filling coincide with drought, we have a drought deficit in order of 123 billion cubic meter. And just remember from Deltares studies what 1 billion cubic meter will cost. This is the cost in the average reduction of hydropower. This cost is distributed on 25 years. So you multiply the gross by 25. But annually, this is $285 million per year, $1,472 million for average reduction of agriculture, and average reduction of crop is like 688,000, and 528 for the average increase in the food imports, and average reduction in agriculture jobs like 1.12 million. This is not account for other social that's not quantified, like the increase of rate of crime, that's like the immigrations that will be occurred due to the unemployments. And to conclude, I am sorry, just taking more time. So we presented comprehensive, equitable, reasonable, adaptive, and cooperative formula, and we believe a cooperation is the key word. Without cooperation and real cooperation, there is no way to solve this. So thank you very much for your time.